Hello, everyone. Thank you all for joining Plant Profits. I'm your host, Vern Davis. Plant Profits is brought to you by Produce Global. I'm excited about my guest. This is a look into the big picture of what's happening in cannabis, and it's ongoing and it's been going. And I want to bring it to light with someone who's doing it better than anyone. My next guest is a passionate innovator and product developer, and that's been his past and his history, with over a decade of experience across, highly controlled consumable products like adult beverage and cannabis. And his past, he spent time in Molson Beer. He's got a lot of cannabis experience. When you talk about coming to where he's at today with 3 years experience at Canopy Growth, right? So my guest today, and welcome please to Plant Profits, Paul Weaver, Head of Cannabis at the Boston Beer Company. Paul,
hey,
how
Vern.
are you, man?
How's it going, Vern? Good seeing you.
Great. Good to see you. Good to see you. When you got placed, I remember when your announcement came out that you were going to be doing what you're doing, and we'll get into exactly what you're doing today in the chat. But I was so excited because we got a large player with an amazing brand, a brand that is built on how it's made, right? Coming into the cannabis arena with someone that has the beer experience and the cannabis experience. When you came to Boston Beer, 3 years in cannabis is 30 years, that's that's a long time.
Well, yeah, I mean, and it's really been a match made in heaven. We set up this, so Boston Beer Company, as you mentioned, Vern, it's kind of hit makers in the beverage alcohol space. We started with Sammy Adams in the 80s and helped usher in and kind of mature the craft beer movement in the 80s.
You did.
But we didn't stop there. We launched Twisted Tea, which is now a top 10 beer in America. Truly Hard Seltzer and Angry Orchard Cider. So like 4 really big, unique opportunities in the beverage alcohol space. We also have craft beer brands like Dogfish Head.
Yeah, you just bought them a couple
City,
years ago. Yeah.
Coney Island out in Brooklyn.
Mm-hmm.
And now I was brought on to develop an R&D department.
Tell me about those conversations. Tell me about how this thing got kicked off, and why Boston Beer. Did they reach out to you, or did you go to them with an idea?
Yeah, I mean, a little bit of both. I had, when I left Canopy Growth Corporation, I just really knew I wanted to focus my career on cannabis beverages. That, to me, is the future of the industry and the future of normalizing the category. And I've always been a passionate fan of all of Boston Beer's products. My first legal beer when I was 21 was a Sam Adams mixer pack my uncle gave me, and my family's from Boston originally. Actually, my dad's side's from Texas, Vern, but my mom's side's from Boston. So I knew I really wanted to try and meet the team from Boston Beer and see if there was a fit. And I had a chance to have a conversation with Dave Berwick, their CEO, and Robert Vail, their head of innovation. And lo and behold, they had been kicking the tires on getting into the space as well. And I think it was just a match made in heaven. They had been thinking about entering the cannabis space in Canada. And here I am, a dual citizen living in Canada, passionate about beer, passionate about cannabis, and let's just do it. So yeah, the stars really aligned, and we put the pieces together. And that was about a year and a half ago. And slowly we've been establishing the foundations of our R&D capabilities here in Canada, where cannabis is unequivocally legal, and we're developing best-in-class drinks up here in Canada.
That's great. You said something. You said you believe beer or drinks, specifically drinks, is a way of normalizing the consumption of cannabis.
Yeah, absolutely.
Talk to me about that, because I'm in agreement. I think beer is just a natural way of addressing normalization of the product. And I think that, it's less than 2% of the category now, but it has this huge opportunity in how we're going to break through. So talk to us about that a little bit.
I mean, where to begin? I think first, like, let's just think about the practical realities of consuming cannabis and inhalation and smoking, and even in like lower temperature vape settings.
Yeah.
I don't know. Personally, I just don't really like inhaling things. I don't like smoking. I'm a cannabis consumer for a long time, and smoking joints is kind of the status quo. But I would prefer probably to smoke less weed and consume it in other ways. So I think there's a trend towards more healthier alternatives to consuming cannabis, and edibles is one way, but drinks is another. But then when we think about the platform of beverages, drinks are far more social. Cannabis drinks are 5 times more likely to be consumed in a group of 5 or more people, right? Like in your group setting with your friends, with your family, out in the open. You're not kind of stepping away from the group for kind of a lonely joint outside, or you're not having to disrupt the party by lighting up and smoking up the whole room. You are able to participate in the group occasion, whether you're a cannabis consumer or not. And I think that's all we can ask for, is just normalizing consumption. If you want to be in the party and drink a beer, you want to be in the party, you want to drink a cannabis beverage, like, all can be welcome. And that's what I really like about cannabis drinks, is it's just so inclusive, it's so social, and it really just normalizes it. So it's just not a thing. It's whatever you want to do, man. It doesn't have to be disruptive. It's just your personal choice within the same group setting. So I think it's both the realities of maybe we should all be smoking less and looking for what better alternatives to consuming cannabis, and just drinks and sharing a drink and sharing a toast with someone. These are all standard social norms. So yeah,
I think that's a great point. The socialization factor of liquid is a big deal into this, and I see that. The first hurdle in liquid is obviously you want to be able to. There's a couple of hurdles. You got to be able to control the dosage and understand and labelize it, and make sure that people are buying what they are buying is real. That's important. The other thing is it's got to taste good, and that's been a big hurdle. I mean, there's a bunch of liquid out there that doesn't taste very well.
Well, I mean, Vern, that's what's awesome about working with Boston Beer, right? To do this with there's no like mystery around the success of our company. Our company is successful because we make super awesome, kick-ass tasting drinks. And
you do.
We have an R&D department that's world-class, and to be able to tap into those resources, to tap into their skills and tools to elevate the taste profile of our drinks. Right now, we have a beverage in Canada that's called Teapot. Teapot is a cannabis-infused iced tea.
Right.
And Teapot has no cannabis taste, has no cannabis aroma. It has perfect liquid stability, and it is what I believe the new benchmark for liquid quality in cannabis drinks, because it's standing on the shoulders of years of cannabis science mixed with decades of R&D experience that Boston Beer's built, particularly around twisted tea and how we make a great tasting iced tea. So I think it's the maturity of beverage alcohol R&D meets kind of the ongoing R&D development of cannabis liquid technology, and that's where we're at.
Why did we choose tea to be the first product?
Well, I mean, it's a very popular flavor right now. Twisted tea in particular is a top 10 selling beer, and it's our best selling drink right now. So I think in terms of just data pointing to what consumers like, tea is easy to work with, and we know from an R&D lens how to make tea. But cannabis and tea have this really kind of interesting nuance. One of the things that we struggle with, especially with us trying to introduce cannabis to new consumers, is this notion that there's a right pot for the right occasion. Like choose your pot for what you're trying to go for. And that can get really confusing, and that can get really mired in different vernacular. But tea is the same thing. There's daytime teas, nighttime teas, good morning teas, sleepy time teas. And so we really like this parallel of pairing the right tea with the right pot for the right occasion. So we have our first liquid's called a Good Day Iced Tea, and it's a lemon black tea. And we infuse it with a strain called Pedro's Sweet Sativa, a nice uplifting sativa strain. It's very popular here in Canada. And it allows us to kind of educate time of day through tea. We have a Good Evening Iced Tea that's coming out later this year. That's a blueberry chamomile and a strain called Black Sugar Rose, which is a nice relaxing indica. Nice. And it's those two parallels, right? Tea, we're already kind of attuned to tea as a a time of day ritual. Cannabis, for those that are experienced, know it's the same thing. We're just kind of putting those two worlds together with Teapot.
Well, you're talking to a very highly educated tea consumer. I love tea, and I'm drinking tea right now as we do this. And I don't drink coffee; I drink tea. And I asked the question of why, because I see that tea is a very it's a drink that can be flexible, right?
Well, and I mean, I grew up in Arizona, and for me, tea is unsweetened, cold, brewed iced tea. But
Right.
I know Texas is probably the line there, but once you start getting into the South, it's sweet tea.
Yeah.
You have kind of the different ways that it comes to life.
No,
But
Texas is a sweet tea
it's
place.
a sweet tea place.
It's
All right.
a sweet tea place.
So you kind of have those two worlds there.
Yeah.
Then you have hot tea. So there's also caffeine in tea, and I think there's some natural, like chemically proven uplifting effects of tea. It's not just kind of semiotics and aromatics. It's like there's caffeine in tea in some teas. There's no caffeine in other teas. So
that's right.
We also get to play on the functional benefits of tea. So yeah, no, I love tea as a platform. I love Teapot as a cheeky brand name to communicate a very simple idea of the right tea and the right pot for the right occasion.
Oh, I love that. That's perfect name. I tell you what, Paul, we're going to take a quick break. Then we're going to dive into more about Teapot and what you're doing at the Boston Beer Company. My guest today is Mr. Paul Weaver. He's head of cannabis at the Boston Beer Company. I want to thank all of you for joining us here on Plant Profits. I'm your host, Vern Davis. Thank you. We'll be right back. Hey, welcome back, everyone. I'm Vern Davis. I'm your host of Plant Profits, and Plant Profits is brought to you by Produce Global. My guest today, and we've been having a wonderful conversation with Mr. Paul Weaver. Paul is head of cannabis at the Boston Beer Company. Now, Paul, when I was really looking at, when you confirmed you're going to be a guest, and I started looking at the product and what you guys were doing, obviously, the first thing I did is I went to the Boston Beer Company website. Okay.
Bostonbeer.com.
Yeah.
Okay. Maybe it's due for an upgrade, I think.
Yeah. And
I heard
I didn't see, I didn't easily find Teapot, right? I didn't, I didn't see it. So, with my advanced search skills, I said, well, let's just put in Teapot and see what I get. And obviously I start to look, and I find it because on your Boston Beer has a wonderful website because it lists all the hits: Sam Adams, Truly, Twisted Tea, Dogfish Head, all the hits, man. You got the portfolio is amazing. And I said, well, okay, why isn't it there? So let's just take a half step back and just tell everyone why we're in Canada first.
Yeah, no, it's a great question as far as kind of our broader strategy and what we're in the cannabis space for the long term, Vern. And what that means is we're committed to developing the right product and letting our product start to speak for itself. The US market, though, has lots of legal firewalls, and those that are willing to participate in the US cannabis industry are doing so kind of in that ultra gray area, right, between state law, federal law. And the more ingrained your business is in kind of old institutions like the New York Stock Exchange or traditional banking, or long-standing shareholders that have certain principles, these are all things that cause companies like us to say, the US market just doesn't have the legal conditions or the business conditions that make sense for us. Canada, however, in 2018, legalized cannabis at the federal level.
Right.
There is
no
asterisks,
legal.
of federal or provincial. Canada has legal cannabis, just full stop.
Right.
And what that allows companies like Boston Beer to do is set up an R&D hub as a subsidiary of our parent company and start getting to work. Let's start working on what our products would look like, what our recipes would look like. And it's not just the liquid itself, but it's also like how we manufacture it, how we do it at scale, how we do it in a more cost-effective manner, how we manage our budgets, how we kind of build a business that's a little bit more rock solid, so that when we do enter the U.S. market, we're a well-oiled machine that we can slide
Yeah.
right into the beast that is Boston beer. So yeah, you won't see us, too overt in terms of our kind of U.S. presence, because as far as the U.S. goes, we're an alcohol company. But in
Yeah.
Canada, we are a cannabis R&D department that's preparing a product portfolio for when we can enter the U.S. market, whenever that is. And we like what we're up to so far. We've gotten a lot of positive feedback on our product, on the drinks. And yeah, we're really just trying to keep our heads down and start getting to work up here in Canada.
Yes, the rehearsal for the big show.
Yeah, it's kind of like the recon mission, I guess.
Yeah, that's great though. You're practicing. What a great place for you to be, because I've never seen Boston Beer rush anything. And
well, the more that I learn as an employee of the company, the more you learn that all of our hits went through lots of slow burn, like Truly used to be called Truly Spiked and Sparkling, and it was in a clear bottle. It wasn't the kind of polished up brand that it was now.
That's
Angry
right.
Orchard had a different name. Twisted Tea had a different name. Everything kind of took time to refine the product image, but at its core was always a great tasting liquid. And I think that's what we're confident is. Like the branding, the marketing laws, the logos, all this stuff is going to continue to evolve, but at its core, everything that Boston Beer makes starts with a great tasting liquid.
Yeah, no, that is so true, Paul. That is definitely so true. You said something that we need to address. You said that we were waiting on the right time. Look, a national federal legalization of cannabis in the U.S. I don't know if that's a short-term reality for us. So, and you said something, you nuanced the answer, and you said that you really are waiting for the right time, because you can't be waiting for us to go fully federally legal. So how do you make that decision as more markets become open markets for legalized adult use cannabis? When is the right time for you to get into, the largest cannabis market in the world? So how are you making that decision?
Well, this is $1 billion question for the entire industry. And I think one of the things so first, there are some black and white issues with us entering US cannabis, particularly around our financial relationships, around our banking, around our stock exchange listing, and jeopardizing kind of our core business of alcohol. And I think first step is, if we were to enter the US market, how would that affect our core business that our shareholders rely on? And if the answer is, any risk whatsoever, we would not do that. So let's assume that we pass that risk. Let's say there's some rescheduling event or some broad precedent being set across our peers around New York Stock Exchange or banking or insurance providers or whatever. Let's say the legal requirements and financial implications have all been cleared, and we've now found a pathway that allows us to enter. Well, so too would that pathway be for the entire Fortune 500. And there could be, a flood of irrational knee-jerk reactions to that. We're a patient company. We're a US-based company. We're also a Boston-based company. And so for us, first checkbox, are we compromising our core business by entering? Let's assume that we checked that box and the answer is no. Then it's where and when. What's the right time and what's the right market for us to enter? Because we don't need to be first to market. I think one of the things that we've learned, I've been in this industry a while, Vern, so have you. I just saw the last couple of weeks, Curaleaf pulled out of California and Colorado, and these are established markets. And I think first mover advantage, and I used to work at Canopy Growth Corporation here in Canada. First mover advantage in cannabis might not be all it was cracked up to be in terms of establishing, early market share. I think what it allows us, first mover really just teaches everyone the right ways to do things. So I think the first step is, what's the legal framework for us to enter, that we don't compromise our business? And then, how do we time our market entry correctly so that we're not the first one through the door that's getting roughed up, but we're also not too late to the party. So I think it's, I know I didn't really answer the question because there's no specifics to it, but I do think you have to divide them out. It's not just, yes, we can. It's also, should we and when and where.
Well, what you really said is that when we enter, we have one shot to be successful.
Oh, yeah, I don't know. Well, I wouldn't say that. I think, when we enter, we just don't have to be so impulsive or rush to being first to market. And I think
I
that's the
totally
commercial
understand.
lesson that I think I've learned over the last, 5 years in the industry is first to market is not as necessary as, doing it right and doing it with the right product and being, very consistent in your product experience.
Absolutely. So tell me about the success of Teapot in Canada.
Yeah, well, we just, it was a slow burn last year. We kind of announced the brand, piloted it in a few kind of middle of nowhere provinces. No offense to our friends in Saskatchewan or Manitoba, but we did get the product in a few stores there just to get some early feedback, and it was phenomenal. We really liked what we were hearing, particularly our credentials coming in and getting those listings by saying, we're not just some startup cannabis company. We're a 40-year-old beverage connoisseur coming into the cannabis space. And the taste is just amazing. I think that's the thing
that's
beautiful. We're hearing most importantly is that our product taste is just exceptional. And I think we're really leaning in on that. And I think that's the reason why it was just named the best new cannabis drink of 2023 in Canada. So the idea of actually having a little bit of recognition for what we think is a best-in-class product is fantastic. And we've got a lot of exciting promotions throughout 2023, more flavors coming, new markets. So it's going to be an exciting year for Teapot, but last year was kind of that startup foundational year, and we really liked what we saw.
Oh, that's great. That's what I love about tea. Flavors is a friend, right? It's really, and consumers are so accustomed to getting varieties of tea. And they're expecting it, and you just have to hit it, right? You just have to have your research and make sure that you get the taste right, taste profile right, the usage reasons right, all those things, which you'll do because you're in the right place. You're with Boston Beer Company. That's what you guys do. You get those things right, and I think that's really, really awesome. Why don't you show us the product?
Oh, my display here.
Yeah.
So this is how it shows up in a store. So when you walk into any dispensary, you've got these nice little displays.
Where do you put that? Where do you want that little display?
I mean, this is the funny thing about what we've learned, Vern, right? Like every dispensary, whether it's Apothecarium, Tokyo Smoke, Canna Cabana, Superette, every cannabis retailer has a beautiful aesthetic that's uniquely their own, has a really engaged staff that's teaching certain ways about the category, but they're all different kind of educational tools, right? Some are like, go over here for uppers, go over here for the relaxers, go over here for sleep. Some is just, here's our drink aisle, here's our edible aisle.
Right.
You can't create a big mass hope that it'll slide into retailers' models perfectly. You have to be really flexible. This little puck here, that little puck here, works everywhere. It works in a retailer that has a small independent shop. It works in a key account that's got a chain, and they've got a model that works. We love that we can just slide this tray here into anything and just put our can on top. And it allows us to be a consistent brand experience in every retailer, regardless of how that retailer chooses to brand and design their store.
No, it's great. I love that. I love the display piece. It is very flexible and it doesn't take a lot of space, which that's always the pushback on things like that is how much space it takes up in the retail outlet. So I think that is wonderful. Tell you what, we're going to take a quick break and we'll come back. And I want to dive into some other things that have been on my mind about you and your journey to Boston Beer Company. I'm Vern Davis. I am your host of Plant Profits. My guest today is Mr. Paul Weaver. He's head of cannabis at the Boston Beer Company. And look, this has been fun. I want to really get into Paul and what he's doing about the people in the cannabis industry. We'll be right back. Hey, welcome back, everyone. This is Plant Profits, and Plant Profits is brought to you by Produce Global. I'm your host, Vern Davis, and my guest today on Plant Profits is Mr. Paul Weaver. And Paul is the head of cannabis at the Boston Beer Company. Paul, I love your journey. Man, you grew up in Arizona, went to school down in Arizona. You got into the beer business, was very successful. You showed a lot of progression there. Really got into innovation and creating things in the industry, and you got into cannabis and at Canopy, which is awesome. Look, this journey, my day job with Produce Global, we're in the talent business, right? And we put people into cannabis. And most of those folks come out of traditional consumer products in some shape, form, or fashion, just like you did. Or this window, last 7 years, there's been enough time now where you can actually, if you want someone with cannabis experience and you're hiring them, you can find that now. That is possible now. And people have cycled in and out of the cannabis industry, right? Some people, they touch the base and they says, I'm out and I am not coming back. It's a very different deal. It's extremely fast paced. A lot of things you got to get done in one time. And it's just not for some people. So what are you finding? Are you finding it difficult to get the right fit in your organization? How are you doing that?
In terms of sourcing talent to join my team?
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, I think, you're right. Now we're in a position of legalized cannabis, especially in Canada, where we've had, we're going on year 5 now of legalized cannabis at the federal level, that you can be seeking talent that has both, right? That has cannabis experience, that understands not just like the category, but also like what that means and the pace and the kind of a little bit of chaos and a little bit of the frenetic energy that the cannabis industry kind of requires, plus ingoing industry, right? So whether that's, I came from beverage alcohol, or we bring people from CPG, or we bring people from pharmaceutical industries. I do think that we're now in a place of talent sourcing where you can ask for both a core industry prior to cannabis, plus show me that you understand cannabis and that you still like working in cannabis. Because to your point, Bert, a lot of people do burn out, and you have to, acknowledge that that's something you have to work with. One of the things that we always ask at least I always ask when I'm interviewing candidates, is how they stay motivated to work in cannabis while the industry continues to be so chaotic. And I always find the right answer is those personal motivations. You have to kind of believe that you're on some sort of mission. You have to believe you're part of some sort of cause. Cannabis has some sort of personal relationship to you, so that it's worth it, so that you feel like all the energy and time spent and the kind of stress that comes with working in cannabis is all worth it.
Yeah, I think that's really important. It's got to come from within, because it is a dynamic, I would say, is a kind word, dynamic industry and business. Are you mentoring folks? Or have you found it to be something you need to do to make sure that when you identify, I got a great talent here, there's going to be some bumps, but they can do it like I did it, and I know they can, and I'm going to help them through it?
Occasionally I'll do some, individual mentoring. But one of the things I also am really passionate about is education and doing like guest lectures and kind of participating in the university education network. So I'll do a few guest lectures to kind of give a bit of a hot take, insider take on the state of the cannabis industry. It's not what you kind of read in the newspapers, because I do believe that, we need our next generation of leaders to take the mantle after you and I retire and keep going. Like the industry's not going anywhere. And I would hope that we're learning from our mistakes. One of the things that I found really funny when I worked at my first job in the beer industry was with Molson Coors, which is this old 18th century brewer up here in Canada. Like the Molson Brewery has like historical landmarks. And they had an archivist. This person's whole job was to just keep historical records of business decisions made going back like 200 years.
That's
and I thought
amazing.
that was such a cool idea that like the beer industry has had centuries, pause of prohibition, but centuries to learn from past precedent and build on those mistakes and start to kind of stand on each other's shoulders. And I think keeping that education journey going on for cannabis and learning from our mistakes, because this industry, is something that needs to sustain beyond all of our careers. And I think it's individual mentoring, but I'm mostly passionate about educating students on, giving them some straight talk before they get into the industry, hopefully leveling up every time.
Oh, I think that's great. You're starting them young. And
well, all over 19. Okay.
Yeah, but you know what I mean? They haven't done anything really yet. And but you're introducing them and opening their eyes to the industry. And I think that's an important step. And I wish more people would do that and we continue to grow in that aspect. And I think that's amazing. So when you look in the Canada landscape and the beverage part of cannabis, who do you identify as your competitors, real competitors?
Competitors, it's a great question, because I think that cannabis drinks in particular, we're all friends, like we all grow the denominator together. Like we all know each other that, that are leaders in the cannabis drink space, and we don't really think of ourselves as competitors. I would say,
but you are, I mean, in the nature of the structure of life and business, you're fierce competitors, but what you're saying is you're cheering for everybody to be successful because that means the category is growing.
Yeah, I don't want to say competitor, Vern, because that's not really my energy. But I think, in terms of like the nuance of how I separate our class of products, I do think that the extremely high dose cannabis drinks that are out there, the 100 milligram drinks to the drinks that have like the 5-hour energy kind of vibe. Yeah. One, I think they're in a tougher competitive battle because they're really trying to fight edibles versus, social alcohol consumption. And they don't really do us any favors in terms of introducing new consumers to the category, because it's an intense experience when you have like 100 milligrams of THC. So I think for me, and it's not even a competitor because I don't think we're competitors, but I think in terms of share of voice and trying to preach the message of cannabis drinks, I do think that the higher dose cannabis drink brands confuse the message a little bit for my audience. And I think, one of the things that we always seem to champion is separating the two. Like low dose cannabis drinks is a completely different conversation, a completely different occasion, and a different consumer than, a full strength 100 milligram liquid edible. And I think that's probably the closest answer that you're going to get out of me, is separating the two worlds of extra strong, liquid edibles versus sessionable cannabis drinks. I think that's probably the biggest competitor, is trying to just separate the two conversations and making sure that we're not setting up people for
bad experiences. Of course, I think that's good. Is that what you're doing with your messaging?
Oh, absolutely. Everything we're doing, the Teapot brand, Teapot is a 5 milligram THC beverage, right? Which took a long time to kind of debate, right? What's the right potency? And it's designed for an average consumer, whether that's new to the category, that they are a little bit anxious, or someone who's well experienced and they're going to probably go smoke a joint outside anyway, to have a nice, relaxing, great tasting iced tea. And the branding, the communication, the taste is all very inviting. It's all very disarming to destigmatize the category and grow the base. There are a lot more non-cannabis consumers than there are cannabis consumers. And so the growth of the category, the long-term growth of the category, is more consumers, more occasions, and cannabis drinks, and Teapot in particular, really do that.
Yeah, and I think the 5 milligrams is a good way to start, and get people into really having terrific experiences with the product. I think that's awesome. That's make some news today. I love, Paul, if we can make some news. So 2023, right? Make some news about Teapot. What's going to
Make some
happen?
news.
Give me,
about
yeah,
Teapot.
give me a forward look. Because 12 months is a long, well, 11 months now is a long time.
Yeah, it's funny. It's because like, you know, and
Yeah,
we're also like just February 1st, and so many of our
yeah,
plans are wet cement. But I'll say this,
yeah.
Teapot is going to have its biggest year to date. It's going to
Okay,
have more than one flavor. We're going to have 3 flavors in market
awesome.
by the summer of this year. And we're going to enter the Quebec market. The Quebec market is
Okay,
um, low key one of the biggest cannabis markets in Canada. It's kind of like the Texas of Canada, actually.
okay.
So for
That's
us to
great.
expand beyond Ontario into Quebec, have 3 flavors to expand beyond Good Day and Good Evening,
Okay.
I think is going to allow us to really establish ourselves as not just the best tasting cannabis drink, but
Hmm.
one of the best performing cannabis drinks in Canada as well. So I think
I
you're going to see
love it.
a lot of
I think
commercial
that's
success
great.
from us and a lot more flavor variety as well.
That's great news. Now let's talk about something really cool that you guys talk about the Peace Collective, the
Oh
Pardons of
gosh.
Canada.
Well, so Peace Collective is one of Canada's coolest clothing companies, and
Hmm.
they're also based in Toronto, and we're friends with them. And we were thinking about something we might want to do to collaborate
Yeah,
for a social cause. And there's a lot of social causes in cannabis that people can choose to focus on.
right.
Um, Criminal justice reform is the big umbrella, and in Canada, the one that we really want to focus on is records pardoning. So in the US, you have kind of weird relationships with pardoning. You had the Biden federal
Yeah,
pardons, and you had kind of state level
yes.
governor pardons. There were no mass pardons in Canada when they
Okay,
legalized cannabis. Instead, it's a very onerous and costly paperwork process to
okay,
apply for a paperwork, and it's just administrative. There's a group that we love called Pardons Canada, and they're a
hmm,
nonprofit that facilitates records pardoning. You know, you go to them with a cannabis conviction, and they will help organize and submit the paperwork for you to clear your record and
okay,
make you legal in Canada. So with Peace Collective, we created a clothing collaboration, and all the proceeds from that clothing collaboration are going to Pardons Canada to help subsidize the cost of these records pardonings. And the campaign narrative is Stop the Stigma, and it's got a really cool, you know, basic message, very big pot leaf, says Stop the Stigma. I sent one
that's
to my
great.
mother in Arizona, and it all is about just kind of stopping the stigma of cannabis, erasing your criminal record, and moving on with your life. You know, like cannabis is legal in Canada, but somehow your criminal record didn't reflect that. I think that's a cause that we can all agree with. So I'm
I
really proud
agree.
of what we did with Peace Collective. You can buy it on our store at store.drinkteapot.com,
Okay.
and yeah, buy a sweatshirt, buy a t-shirt,
Hmm.
buy a tote, and it's all for a good cause.
That's a beautiful thing. That's great. I'm glad we had a chance to allow you to talk about that. And you guys are well-rounded, doing an amazing job. I love the packaging. I love the product.
We got to
I
get you up
love
to
what,
Canada, Vern, to try it. You know, like
yeah.
you got a great logo, but the taste is even better than the
Well, I
logo.
do get to Canada. Obviously, I get to Toronto because a lot of the industry is there.
Okay, well,
And
great. Let me know.
oh, we will definitely do that. And I really appreciate you sharing all of this about Teapot and what you guys are doing at Boston Beer and how you're doing it and why you're doing it at Boston Beer. I really appreciate your appearance here on Plant Profits. And so, and I'm sure, and I'm inviting you openly, please come back. And hey, look, you're going to have 3 flavors. You're going to be in the Quebec, you know, so we're going to have opportunity to talk about how that goes later down in the future. So, Paul, thank you very much. My guest today on Plant Profits, Paul Weaver, head of cannabis at the Boston Beer Company. And I want to thank him for joining us. And Plant Profits is brought to you by Produce Global. And I want all of you to go to wherever you get your podcast, anywhere you get podcasts, you can find Plant Profits. You can go to cannabisradio.com, Apple, Spotify, iHeart, Amazon Music, anywhere you get it. Go find Plant Profits. We appreciate that. Give us a 5-star rating. And you can follow my company, Produce Global, through our social networks, including LinkedIn, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, everywhere on social media is Produce Global. And that's PROTIS global.com. And when you get there, really look at how we're building companies and how we're changing people's lives. That's really important. And so I'm Vern Davis. I'm your host of Plant Profits. Until next time, cheers.